Mapping is. It's a visual method to demonstrate a normally used by business analyst, process engineer, a visual view of what actually happens. Welcome back to another video. It's your girl Slee with another session. So today I want to talk to you guys about process mapping. As someone who's in technology, in the digital transformation area, I want to start coming on here and actually show you what I do. So a lot of us, we hear a lot of people talk about digital transformation and what it is. And I thought maybe, you know what, let me start actually sharing some of the lessons, some of the practical guidance using not real life examples because that's none of your business, but using that are readily available online that we can all use. But before I start, I want to read this quote. So a former colleague of mine recommended this book, Winning in a Digital Age. So as someone who's in digital transformation, a lot of people in tech, we haven't arrived, okay? You literally never arrive in this field because you learn a lot of things as you go. So this book is by Nitin Seth. He is a digital technology leader and he wrote this book, which is quite a great book. I've started reading it, but I'm not finished yet. But I'm going to go back to the earlier chapters. I love this quote because it basically summarizes what we're going to be doing today. The quote says, "To accomplish a difficult task, one must make it easy. One must first make it easier." So a lot of the time digital transformations get thrown around and a lot of people assume that digital transformation is taking technology, application, software, plugging it in, and then Bob is your uncle. Digital transformation is not just talking to technologies, it's also about operating business model, how a business operates. When digital transformation started, when we started talking about the e-commerce, the digital age, it was more geared around consumers, how we create experiences in terms of how we buy online. So that's when it came. But as we grew, we realized that digital is actually an end-to-end ecosystem that actually helps the entire organization. And having done a lot of projects in this field, I always want to caution business leaders from investing in technology where we are actually not fixing a problem. We are probably just magnifying it through technology. And we've obviously learned a lot through all the journeys that we've gone through that you can't automate a messed up process or a messed up operating model. What guides a process, all processes across the business, is how the business actually operates. If the operating model within a business is also not very aligned, you'll find that a lot of functions across the different business units are also doing their own thing in their own way. So it's quite important that we all have one vision, one North Star, one source of truth that will help us guide in this journey. So today we are just talking about process mapping. Think of it as a breakdown of steps, right, within a main process. However, there's also a process, a sub-process within the main process. Let's take this for example. If the main process that sits within finance is to submit invoices for payments to customers, that's the sub-process. But the processes that sit within that process is to create the customer statement for all invoices. That process on its own, or sub-process on its own, is a mini process of the sub-process, but that mini process involves a lot of steps. How we normally get this a bit way wrong is that we look at a system that executes one part of the process or one step of the process, or maybe one or two out of 10 steps, and then we think if we have this system, we are probably solving the problem. No, we are not, okay? With businesses, we find that in a lot of companies, you find that a lot of times team members have a lot of handoffs within the process that don't necessarily sit within the system, where there's friction, where there's a lot of approvals, reviews that sit outside of the system, where time gets taken, where team members take something from a system, extract it, use it for data to actually do something else that's outside the system. So a lot of times with a lot of systems, especially with transactional systems or ERPs or forecasting tools or main core systems that actually carry the transaction within our business, that's really what they're there. They are there to execute transactions. However, outside of that, there are also other activities, but normally they don't house everything in one go. So as we start this journey, what I wanted to do is show you what is process mapping. Let me do this now. We have spoken about some of the basics of process mapping. Let's actually talk about what is process mapping. So today's video is really going to start from there, and then subsequent videos will be then broken down into more detail. So what is process mapping? So I will do my utmost best to define this, and I'm using some of my notes from my preparation just to make it more structured because I can go off a tangent. Okay, so what is process mapping? It's a visual method, a visual method to draw. Okay, so you see my face. the main actor here is the board. So it's a visual method used to draw out a process, into a workflow to complete a specific activity from start to finish. Okay, so this is basically what process mapping is. It's mapping out a process from start to finish in a more visual representation. Normally how this looks like when we are at a workshop is we are sitting down with people who are actually executing those two specific activities for a specific outcome, and they are giving us a visual representation of what the process actually looks like. So it's quite important when we're doing this, we understand what process are we actually discussing, what reflect this process. And we do this in a visual method first because it normally helps kickstart other parts of process mapping to get to a specific visual of either the current process as it stands or the to be, the desired process. So before we go to a to be, we always have to do the current process. So this is basically what it is. So we draw a visual method, make it look beautiful. Workflow, you will see it through from start to finish. Okay, so this is basically what a process mapping is, guys. So now that we know what a process mapping is, now let's talk about the process mapping symbols that help us actually draft or draw this process. So now that we've done that, we're going to go and I'm going to now show you the different symbols, right? I think it's important so you understand, because normally sometimes people use random symbols, and when you use random symbols, they don't mean anything. If someone who needs to take an action out of the process flow, they'll be like, what does this mean? So the reason why we have these symbols, they help us actually understand what is either a manual process, what step or activity, what is a decision that requires to be made in that process. So it's important that we use the different symbols. So the symbol will either be, obviously a process has a start. So it's normally like an oval shape. So this is a start. So probably let me use a different color because I like things, guys. Start. This is a start symbol, okay? And then you also have a process, which is the step by step, which is like a square, rectangles, giving rectangle vibes, guys. So this normally indicates a step in a process. Saying it's a rectangle. This is a process, guys. But this is probably the most basic visual. But for now, I'm starting from like the most basic because why? And I don't know. So process. And then after that, you have a flow. So this arrow means flow direction. And then after that, you have a decision. Because like I mentioned earlier on, not all processes are straightforward. There's a start, but in between, there's either a decision that needs to be made. And then this symbol means document. So this represents a document, like a Word, PDF document, Excel. And then this symbol, let me use the same color. This symbol means delay. Something is delayed in between. And then this symbol means connector. And then the last one is the same as the start, which is the end. But this is probably the very highest level of process symbols. There's so many symbols, but for now, I don't want to confuse everybody because it's not that deep. So this is the end. So these are the symbols that represent start. This is where the process starts. Process, this is the actual step within a process, which is sometimes manual, system related. Document is a document involved in the process or documents. Decision is the decision points that need to be made in between. And then connector is what needs to be connected in terms of either documents from a specific process to a specific decision. Delay indicates within the process, the overall workflow, where is the delay normally experienced, especially if we're talking to like the as-is process. So in a nutshell, this is the symbols that actually talk to the process flow. So without showing these other symbols as well, because I thought maybe, you know what, let me just add all of them here. So this one is the terminator. This is probably where a process or sub-process ends within the main workflow. And this is a sub which is connected to this one, right? And then this one is the data, the different data. And then this one is, so we spoke about documents, but here we might have series of documents. So we create the same symbol, but it might just be a reflection of many documents, multiple docs, okay? And then I think I have actually, I need to say step here. So this is the last piece, not the last piece, but this is basically what we use. So I will let this reflect for a minute and then I will pause. Okay, so probably what I need to touch on before I wrap up this video is that, so we know what a process mapping is. It's a visual method to demonstrate a workflow from start to finish. It's broken down into different visuals in terms of symbols that I've shown you, and this is normally used by business analysts, process engineers. It's even used by businesses, so business teams within the operations team, manufacturing team. The purpose of it is to, instead of verbally explaining a process, you are showing its visual representation, so it gives everybody in the team a visual view of what actually happens, and it's easier then to take that visual view to then improve it. So why use process mapping? So I have some notes here. Find inefficiencies. Okay, so the fact that we have delay in the mix, it's giving inefficiencies. Okay, simplify ideas. Normally what happens when we map out a process, we ask a lot of questions. We ask why. So running workshops, which, for example, things like design thinking, methods such as design thinking, you ask business teams, why do you do that? Why? And this helps us understand whether it's historically been done, or it's just, listen honey, I've been here, I found it like this, it's just the way it's always been done. And then we plan for the what if, because a lot of times, as much as there's a visual representation and we kind of get an idea of what a process looks like, we actually find out that the reason why there's so much delay, inefficiencies, there's a lot of what ifs that have not been factored in the technologies that these processes are being supported by. So build contingency plans. If, let's say, in a decision, if it says goes to this step, if this step is not there, what happens? It's a no, then goes back, the process terminates. If it's yes, it continues. So it also builds those types of workflows. Clarify roles and responsibilities. So in a process, there's also when we do the actual process, there's also roles just on the side that actually show this particular role is done by specific role, this specific process is done by specific role, even if it's one process, right? It creates process documentations, create repeatable guides anyone can follow. So instead of business analysts, process engineers, business team re-engineering the wheel, if somebody had to ask, like auditing, people want to review what we do, we could actually just give the process flow to them. Okay, it actually, it also helps clarify, clarify. It helps with communicating clearly, make decisions faster, support your team, and stay compliant. Okay, so yeah, that is pretty much what I wanted to share today. So probably what I will need to do is also talk about later on. I don't want to jump the gun here, guys, but I want you guys to understand just the basics, and then we will move into the fun stuff. We'll probably find a business problem or opportunity, and then we will map it out. I hope you guys have found this session useful. Like I mentioned, when I started off, I've been working in technology as a digital transformation tech leader. I started off my career in business facing roles, and then I moved into business analyst, and that's when I was able to do a lot of awesome work where I added value, because I did not only work with the tech, but I also work with business to actually understand where are the inefficiencies are. Okay, and also not just inefficiencies, just to improve. Okay, when the business says that we experience delays, it's hard for us to get to customer, we don't know which data points to use, we don't know which the version of truth is, it's because there's no clarity on how different steps within getting the specific report or a deck, whatever the situation is, it's clearly identified. So with process mapping, we kind of bring everybody on the journey where everybody can see what's actually going on and ask questions why. I hope you found this session useful, and we'll see you on the next one.